there will always be evil in the world, always. The only thing that needs to happen for evil to triumph is for good people to be silent. It always broadens and deepens my perspective, a person's perspective, to talk to somebody who's been deeply touched by the event. So you encountered their personal experience. And so I heard their stories and experience, and that was helpful in deepening my understanding. One of the things that they raised as a concern is in my public communications, they didn't know if I understood the significance of the symbol of the Confederate flag and what it meant to black people in the United States. And with respect to learning about what that symbol meant, no, it did not teach me anything new. And I personally see the use of that symbol as a hateful expression with racist intent. I personally do not see it as a assertion of the right to free speech. I don't see it as a cultural symbol honoring the history of the South. I see it as a symbol that is used intentionally to make a racist statement. So they wanted me to understand that, and I feel I know that already. They also wondered if I had an understanding of how they would feel seeing that symbol. And here it gets complicated. And I told them a story about my own family history with the Civil War. My grandfather's uncle was trapped in Charleston, South Carolina with his wife and their family during the Civil War, and they were Northerners who were doing business there who were trapped. Their son was beaten to death by his classmates in high school because of their Northern sympathies. So my own family has experienced something of the tragedy of that conflict. But as honestly a privileged old white guy, when I see that symbol, I can't have the same personal reaction that an African American person whose heritage goes back to slavery in this country. I will not have the same experience. I can understand it. I can have experience in my own family background that helps me understand, but I will not have the same experience that they do. And I know that. I know that I occupy a position of privilege. And I know that to get full understanding of that experience, I have to listen to African Americans in particular. And they were three women of different ethnic heritages, Somali and Nigerian and African American. And they have the experience of black women in this community and on this campus, which is an affinity they share. But not all of them have the personal experience of a family history with slavery in this country. So it's important for me to hear, and that's why I say I have a deeper understanding of the issues and the experience from a conversation with them. Because while I share the same judgment about the symbol, and I find the symbol hateful, and the behavior of the person who brought it to our campus reprehensible, I recognize that my experience will not be the same. They and I had never met before, and they were not at the Unity Walk, and so didn't hear me say some things that are related to what I'm saying now. But they didn't know how I would think or feel about these things, and so it was a great opportunity to share and listen to each other. When our campus is assaulted in this fashion, and that's the way I understand it, that was an assault on our culture, an assault on our community. The response of the president is only part of the whole. What we need to do is prepare as a community to deal with these things when they happen. And so what I've asked my staff and other leaders to do is to support our community as we talk about how we will respond. What will we do? Some people have heard that as suggesting that we're going to push students out front and say the students are supposed to take care of this. And that's not our responsibility. Let the students deal with it. And that's could not be farther from the truth. I recognize that students are going to want to do something. And students are going to have a response. What I want is our collective response to be one that we shape together. And so that requires that we continue, as our conversation Friday did, to talk about how we will deal with the next time this happens and how we will respond as a community. Those folks had done their homework. They understood the limitations of the law. They understood what power I have to stop it, which is very little, and what power I don't have. But I shared with them some things that we're working on we're exploring that might help. There is a provision in city ordinance for the city to abandon or vacate a street for a public purpose. And so that means that the city gives up control over the street to some other entity for an acceptable purpose. And the city could vacate that street that runs through our campus, which would give us control over what happens on that street and the sidewalks adjacent to the street. Mr. Phila was trespassed from this campus in 2002 for behaving in ways that were unacceptable. And that trespass order has been renewed every year since then. We have continued the trespass order. He may not be on our campus. If he's on our campus, he can be arrested. And we're prepared to call the police to do that. But he's a smart, or at least wily person. He understands the law. He understands where he can be arrested and where he can't be arrested. So he stays in that spot where he cannot be arrested. So we're exploring gaining control over the streets with the city so that becomes part of our campus and we can keep him out of our heart. The next possibility is that we could create buffer zone around the campus and push him away from the campus where all the people are to a area farther out where there's nobody watching, which offers him little value. That probably is going to require legislative action, and we've begun to explore that. So there are some concrete things we can do. We've done a threat assessment to say, does he pose a physical risk to our campus? The police judge that he does not. I agree with them, he does not. The risk is a emotional and personal injury that we sustain when we're forced to be in the presence of that behavior. And so that's what we're talking about. So there's ongoing conversations about how we will behave as a community should this happen again. And there are the legal steps we're exploring. And then there's an ongoing need for conversations like the one we're having now and like the one I had last Friday, so that people understand that while I am an old white guy and the provost doesn't qualify for old white guy, he's not old and he's a person of color, a number of other administrators are white and ethnicity, origin. And we have talked a lot about the limits of our ability to experience what our students of color experience. And we know that we need our students of color we need to be in partnership and in relationship and really feel like we act together. We also know, and I deeply believe, and I've said this in other settings, that when one of us is hurt, all of us are hurt. Some members of our community said that certain members of our community were hurt by this. That's wrong. Certain members were hurt more deeply by this, but we were all hurt by this. This was an assault on our community. This was not something that's your problem and not my problem. This is not something that hurt you, but it didn't hurt me. It hurts all of us. It's just that the experience of a black person in the United States is going to be different than my experience. It's just like when a person is murdered, a black man watching the story of a black man being shot has a different response than I have when I see the story of a white man being shot. It doesn't trigger a deep racial history of racism and oppression. When I see that a white man has been shot, it does have strikes deep chords for folks of color. And we know that. And it requires some humility. It requires the ability to be vulnerable and to be open to criticism. I told the women with whom I spoke on Friday that it was hard to listen to them. But I wasn't angry to hear their message. I wasn't frightened of hearing their message. And I was grateful that they had the courage to come and speak with me. And so the leaders of the university need to be able to put themselves in a position where we're vulnerable and open, able to listen and hear. We can listen deeply and with compassion, and making sure that we have and sustain that presence, availability, and connection. We have to attend to that every day on an ongoing basis, and be available for folks who want to tell us a story, ask a question, have us listen. He knows we don't want him here. He knows that he's offensive. I might say that I know you understand that you offend some people. I want you to understand that I find your behavior offensive. I think your behavior is hurtful. I think you intend to hurt people. And I believe that you intend to hurt people that I care about. And I'm angry that you are trying to hurt people that I care about. Do I expect him to pay attention, listen, respond? Is this somebody with whom you can have a conversation? No. Would I choose to say anything to him? Honestly, I doubt that I would. I would have to believe that there was some point in it, some value in it. I think it has more value for maybe to turn my back on him and walk away than it does to engage him. He does not deserve my attention. He does not deserve our attention. The best, strongest message from us is to turn our back and walk away. Now, having said that, we have things we want to say to the world that we should say. We should make statements to the world. We should explain our position. We should tell people why we're doing what we are doing. We should tell the world why we find this behavior despicable. I should be able to tell the world why that behavior makes me angry and why I will not engage with him. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk with you. Thank you for coming to talk.